If you're interested in becoming an absolute academic weapon in 2026, then look no further because you've stumbled upon the right video. If you were a student who were once at the top of the class and now you've fallen off and you're looking for a redemption arc in 2026, then this is the right video for you. It doesn't matter if you have final exams going on or if you have your next semester, whatever it may be, if you're looking to redeem yourself academically in 2026 or in whatever year you're watching this in, then this video is the one for you. Unlike popular study tips like the Pomodoro method, Animedoro, active recall and passive recall, this video actually highlights the most important things you need to do in your life, aka secrets that straight A students have been gatekeeping from you. From note-taking to exam mindsets to what exactly students use to succeed in their academic careers, this video has got it all. My qualifications, I'm a dual degree student at the University of Melbourne and I've been getting at least above 95% in almost every exam I've ever given. If you see me looking at the screen, it's only because I've got a lot of notes written here about the video, which just shows how serious this video is. First and foremost, let's start with how you're exactly supposed to study. So basically, if you guys do not know already what passive and active recall is, passive recall is basically recalling or studying where you're taking the information passively, like highlighting something while reading it or listening to music and studying. All of that count as modes of passive recall. Active recall, as the name suggests, is when you're actively engaging with the material. Let's say you're solving mathematics questions or you're doing flashcards, quizzes, all sorts of scenarios where your brain actually thinks about the content. That's exactly what counts as active recall. If you're looking for study routines, I've got a separate video about that, so you can check it out here. Now, my personal strategy to actually acing every exam I've ever given is to start off with passive recall and then ease into active recall. The thing is, if you directly start off actively recalling some concept or a module you've never ever stumbled across before, it's just going to cause a bunch of confusion in your brain. What I like to do is first passively recall, aka I like to read the same information over and over, highlighting questions or just marking things down and making points as I read through it so that my brain already has like a primary understanding of the material. This is passive recall, and if your study session is around 2 hours, let's say, I like to use at least 45 to 1 hour just on passively recalling the material. However, you can also dedicate a short chunk of time to passively recalling, because active recall, like solving questions in flashcards, is when you'll actually remember the material. I always like to go by the saying that active recall or solving more questions is always going to be way better compared to reading the material passively, unless it's for a theory-based exam. If you're studying something more mathematical heavy, you'll have to spend more time just solving questions and only a good 15 minutes going through the formulas or any random theoretical concept. Depending upon the kind of subject you're studying, your study strategy and the kinds of tools you use have to change accordingly. I feel like for every subject you have, let's say you have 6 subjects, like 5 core and 1 language or whatever combination of subjects you have to adapt and change your strategy according to the subject that you've got. You can't use the same strategy for every single subject that you have, because it's just simply not sustainable and it does not make sense. Depending upon what subjects you have, spend more amount of time solving questions and less amount of time doing theory, versus if you have something like political science or history or geo or whatever, then I would recommend you spend more time actually memorizing the content that's going to be showing up on the exam. I feel like if you're like one day before your exam, definitely solving practice papers is going to be a lot more helpful compared to going through like 100 chapters that you've never ever seen before in the semester. I also feel like sticking to one technique of studying, like only flashcards or only quizzes, is just extremely stupid. I feel like sticking to one trick, hoping it'll ease your academic woes, is just very silly. You need to combine multiple techniques of studying. Let's say you spend 2 hours doing flashcards, spend the next 1 hour basically like blurting onto a whiteboard. What's blurting? In case you didn't know, blurting is basically like you think about a particular topic that you've already studied and you write down every single thing you can remember about that topic. I feel like blurting works pretty well with like theory heavy subjects like political science or history or whatever. And for math, you have to just time yourself. I feel like for any statistic or like any numerical subject, the more you time yourself, the easier it's going to be for you in the final exam. Because let's say there's like 6 questions you don't know the answers to, because you've timed yourself, you can solve the ones you do know pretty fast and dedicate like a good portion of the exam to the questions you don't know and spend time working through it all step by step. Brings me to the second point. It's not about the hours, it's about the wars. What I mean by wars is the pages you've read through, the questions you've solved, and all the different kinds of academic stress you've gone through. Because I feel like just because it takes your friend an entire week to study one module does not mean it's going to take you the same amount of time as well. What you got to understand in this like topic is that every single person's brain is wired differently, unfortunately or fortunately, and so someone else's time of studying or someone else's like study status is not the same thing that's going to be staying with you. I feel like since you need to focus yourself, you need to focus less on timing yourself for the number of hours you spend studying, and instead measure how much you've studied based on the material or the ground you covered. I always like to call it as how much ground I've covered, because depending on how much ground I've covered in the overall like map of what I have to study, I get like a rough idea as to how much more stuff I need to cover before the final exam. When you're approaching studying in terms of an exam you gotta give, you can't approach studying as, oh, I love the material, or wow, I'm gonna like completely get involved in history. If you've got an exam, approach it with the point of view of having an exam. My biggest like academic mistake, or the biggest problem I used to have, was that I would read every single sentence of the textbook just in case something happens, or like what if something comes up on the exam. The truth is that's like really rare, like it's barely gonna ever happen. And so if you're studying with the intention of just getting good marks on the exam without any respect of like remembering the content, which is okay, I mean, you don't need to, and if you just want to pass the exam, you need to study everything with respect to what's going to be on the exam, which means focus more on like highly weighted topics or stuff that's like really really important. Or if your friend who took the class before is telling you that X topic is like more important, just focus your energies on that and blindly trust them. As I was saying, you need to focus less on the amount of hours you studied or the amount of days you spent studying a particular exam material's content as an indication of how prepared you are. You get to know how cooked you are or how you're going to ace the exam depending on how confident you feel, right? But you got to use the amount of material you've covered, or look at a practice paper and like try to solve the questions and use your score on that as an indication as to how prepared you are. I feel like it's always best to solve a practice paper or like any exam content at least 3 days before the actual exam on a worst case scenario, because then you've got 3 days to like go over every single topic that you like fucked up. And because you have this like time to go over the topics you don't know, it's going to be way easier for your mental health as well, as compared to solving a practice paper like 1 hour before the exam and then like crying because you don't know anything. I feel like using practice papers as a way of gauging your understanding of the material of the exam is way better compared to how many hours you spend studying. The truth is, because not all of us can study for like 100 hours, or some people absorb information faster, some people just take it slower, and that's just what you have, and you gotta work with what you have instead of trying to like complain or trying to like cheat the system. I feel like if you're someone who learns slower, for me, for math, I take a lot of time to study. I take like, if my friend can study in like 1 hour a particular concept, it'll take me at least 3 hours, because I'm just not analytically inclined. For you, you could be good at math but bad at theory, and you got to know where your blind spots are, because your blind spots are the things that's going to like affect your overall percentage, GPA, WAM, or whatever. Knowing where you suck, you got to spend more time at that and bring it up to par with your strengths. I go more into this in my study routine video, so you can definitely check that out as well. I'm the kind of person, if I study, I can study really slowly, like listening to music, enjoying myself, and having like really dim lights. I can study for a long period of time but actually not cover anything. You know, when you think to yourself that you spend the entire day studying and you didn't get anything covered, that's because you weren't actually studying. It's like you could take 6 hours to complete a topic and your entire day would have been wasted by then. Instead, what you got to do is set a timer of 45 to like 50 minutes and say, I'm going to complete X portion of the topic in only this 45 minutes, and after that I'm going to completely leave it. It's basically like this concept that's like work expands to like fill the time, or it like minimizes to like meet the time frame. Depending on how much time you set for yourself, you will automatically like try to finish it in that amount of time. And what I like to do is, if I've got like multiple exams or multiple like topics to cover, I will only use that 45 minutes on one particular topic and I will move on from it. If it's not being completed in like 45 minutes or 1 hour, just move on and come back to it later at the end. If there's something that's like really hard to memorize, I would say save it for the last, because then you can try out all the memorizing techniques and just do it at the end, because you've already completed like 90% of the material. If you have, let's say your entire material is broken down into 10 pieces, and you cannot spend your entire day just trying to do one piece out of the entire 10 pieces. Instead, focus your energies on trying to complete all the 9 pieces and then come back to the one remaining piece at the end, so that you can spend your time trying to memorize it if it's important. I feel like the more ground you cover is more important compared to how well you cover it sometimes. Like, there's certain things that are just more important than an exam, and you don't need to spend your time memorizing every single thing that's given in the textbook. I feel like setting a timer always helps, because then I don't really waste my day. I'm like, I'll study today morning, but I spend the entire morning studying something. It's not going to work. Give yourself a very strict timer. Have a rigid routine, in the sense 45 minutes for topic A, 10-minute break, 45 minutes for topic B, 10-minute break. If topic A is not covered in those 45 minutes, minutes, we move on to the next principle. The next principle is basically something called as a 0 hour. A 0 hour is basically where that's the only 1 hour where you cover everything else that wasn't covered in the time frame that you allotted to it. Let's say you completed like 30 pages out of 40 pages in in the 1 hour timer that you had, then finish the remaining 10 pages only in the 0 hour. Once your 1 hour is elapsed, that's it, you move on to the next thing, because this helps you maintain both the flow in your studying but also making sure you're not wasting your time on only one topic, because that's just silly. Knowing one topic well is okay, but if you walk into the exam and there's like 50 other topics and you only know one topic intimately, what's the point in that? You got to focus more on an exam point of view if that's your goal with studying. If you only want to know the information and be a philosopher, just then be my guest, study for the whole day and only cover one topic. If you're focusing on the exam, the more efficient you are, the more successful you're going to be. Next, the power of incentive. This is the last part of the video, but incentive is basically you figuring out your why. Why exactly do you want to study? Do you not want to fail? Do you want to do well for yourself in the future? Do you want to defeat an academic rival? If you have your why, your incentive right in front of you, studying well or becoming an academic weapon is going to be really easy, because your incentive has to be the one thing that really, really motivates you. If you've got your why, write down your why on a post-it note and stick it in front of you so that it motivates you. Some of my friends, we write down our tuition fees as a why and just keep it in front of us, so that looking at that number is going to motivate you to study if that's something that gets you going. I also feel like when you're like stuck with math or any subject that you're bad at, just think about it. Think about your why and your incentive when you're doing something particularly difficult, because that just shows you why you started in the first place. And if you have your incentive locked in really well, I feel like studying for a long period of time will not be difficult for you. I feel like if you're 2 pages away from completing a chapter and your brain gets completely fuzzy remembering your why, it's definitely going to help you lock it down and actually study really well. I feel like for becoming an academic weapon in terms of studying and stamina itself, I will be exploring that in a different video called How I Study for 12 Hours a Day. But that's a story for a different day. To be an academic weapon does not mean that you have to be on time. Sometimes shit just happens and you forget things, and that's completely okay. What matters is that you'll use the amount of time that's given to you really wisely, and you're able to save your mental health and also study and score good marks at the same time. And to me, that's exactly what an academic weapon is if you have holidays and if you have things, if you have time, just utilize your time really wisely. And if you have an exam the next day, just don't waste your time doom scrolling. Like, throw your phone into like a different room, give it to your friend, whatever you want to do it, and have your goal in your mind really clear. Because if you have a goal locked in, if you have your incentive locked in, I think any other step I mentioned previously is going to be very easy. Also, if you're really struggling, just get a pack of White Monster and just chuck it throughout the night, and just like you can study really easily. Anyways, thank you for watching this video. I will see you in the next one.